Hello, how are you doing? I hope you all are doing so well. I've been feeling the need to make a video these last couple of days, and yet the energy has been strange. And I kind of want to talk about that because what I've been seeing, and I don't normally see these kinds of things, but what I've been shown and what I really do feel is that this is all done already. What we have come in to anchor, we have anchored. And yeah, that doesn't mean our work is done, but we can speak in terms of this, what a lot of people would kind of describe as the splitting of the worlds, right? So if we look at what is going on in the world, and what I mean by that is, if I am in my home and I am just doing what it is I need to do, or doing my work, or interacting with my kids, I'm not even aware that there is this whole other situation going on out here. The only reason I become aware of that is because I'm either tuning into, I'm using some kind of electronic device which is transmitting messages to me. If I go outside, if I sit with myself, there is an incredible stillness and a peace which has been very easy for me to tap into lately. And in some ways, yes, because of this situation out here in the world, I'm almost being sent there more often, right? It's like you get a bit bored in the house. So what do? We go outside. We go to the park. We go to the forest preserve. Go for a walk, whatever it may be. And I did go through these stages as this was all starting to evolve, of being in a lot of fear in the beginning, because it's hard to know what to trust and what to believe. And as the news first started coming out and school was canceled, both of my children started saying, oh, my throat is sore. Oh, I think I have a cold. Oh, I have a cough, right? We went through that for about a week. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I need to start, I'm not denying there's some kind of something going around. But we get that from time to time, and yet it's a weird energy, because now I feel like where I used to be a little bit afraid, like, oh, someone's going to catch something, like it's not really even in my consciousness anymore. And it's strange because, again, I'm not denying there's something. But the less I interact with the devices which send me these messages, the less I feel that in my reality. My reality is what's going on in my home and the work that I need to do and the things I need to focus on for my kids. And that's where my reality is. And this may not be true for some people, right? They may be in a different situation. And again, I'm just speaking from my own experience because that's all I can really do. But what I do start to see and understand is that there really are two realities present. There are two, we could even say two truths, right? Because there is the truth of how I feel, this stillness and this peace and this connection to myself at such a deep level now that I've never experienced before. And then there is this out here, and I say this in this way because I think a lot of people have started to notice, and I've even seen some news broadcasts on YouTube from specific news channels. But then in the comments, it's like people are even starting to notice the disparity. And even commenting, about like, oh, they're showing this specific place where they are burying bodies, and comments of like, well, yeah, but that's always where they bury unclaimed bodies. So why is this being sensationalized, kind of thing? And so you can see the light is starting to kind of shine through these cracks. And what is this? This is essentially programming. And what is programming? I've always said programming, we are born into it. It gets impressed into us as children. And I always say, though, programs aren't necessarily from this lifetime. We come in with things in our energy fields already that have been set there. But then, of course, the societal stuff gets more and more deeply impressed because our parents are in that as well, right? The people who raise us and take care of us, and our teachers and educators and so on and so forth, right? We're all a part of this system. We're all a part of the program. And I was shown, really, it is almost like a factory where we grow up, and it's like a stamping system, right? It's like, this thing that will come and it embosses this message into us, which is, don't think for yourself, don't think outside of the box. I remember, when I was growing up, I lived on a street which was pretty isolated. There were only a couple houses, whereas, and that was unusual because everyone I went to school with basically grew up in like a subdivision. So it was a little bit different for us growing up, and we had a very large yard, and we kind of wandered because we backed up to a farm, but there was like forest and stuff like that in between. So led a very different kind of childhood growing up than other people that I went to school with. And one of the things that started happening, though, they started to develop the property around our like street, on the outskirts of our street. And for whatever reason, my family and all the other families, like, we went to the town hall meetings, how they do this, whatever, we're going to have a hearing on this or that. And I was young at the time, but, they said, oh, why don't you write a letter about how you, whatever. And I remember being so passionate about, like, why are we destroying trees? This makes no sense. We need every tree that we have. And why, 4 houses per acre, it just was like crazy to me, even at that age. I don't know how young I was. But I remember going to that meeting at the village and realizing, people, all kinds of people presenting these stories and testimonies and whatever. And the village just didn't care. They had already made up their mind. It was very clear. And the guy even said, like, do we have to take the opinions and feelings of the residents and so and whoever was there into consideration? And he said, no, we don't. Like, flat out. Like, that's not our job here. It was very weird, but it was something that I never really recovered from as a kid, because it basically told me that despite what may be true, because I felt this at a very deep level, this unfairness of this situation, despite what you may truly, truly believe in, the government doesn't necessarily agree with that, and they can go their own way. And so I was a little bit disenchanted with life after that, I think. And it's something that has always stayed with me. The feeling of powerlessness, the feeling of helplessness. And these are the kinds of things, when we talk about programming, this is what we're talking about. You're shown over and over that your voice doesn't matter, that your true feelings and your true beliefs have no place in this world. And to a varying degree, depending on how much of this we hold and we carry over from our past lives, past experiences, even other realms that we come from. And this is the other thing we need to understand. Like, it is not just Earth that is going through this. We talk about off-world control. Well, what do you think is going on with those other planetary systems if they are coming here to control? obviously those other realms are under control as well. And so this isn't just about us here. This is about the entire, whatever you want to call it, multiverse, omniverse, the entire existence of all. And this is a very specific time, a very specific space to be within, to be able to witness this and to be able to see the programs and to be able to see the systemic distortion and destruction of not only humanity, but the truth of light itself. And the thing is, you can't wipe that out. Like, that will always exist. You know, and it does, and we feel that still inside of us, you know, that little light, even if it's small, we can feel that call and that voice. And that's what is so awful about this existence sometimes, is that even though we know we should just get with it and life would be easier, we can't override this truth that is inside of us. And so when we feel discontent, we feel depressed, we feel these awful emotions and feelings, that's because that's the light trying to come through. That's not because you're not getting with the program and you're not figuring shit out. So we have to understand, again, the reversal of what we've been believing, you know? And so when we talk about these programs, what's going on out here, this is where I say it's already done in so many ways. Like, the light is here, it is anchored. It's just a matter now of walking through it. And this is what's been so challenging about the energies this week, is it's been, you know, I have gone through my fair share of the distortion and kind of the evilness, and feeling that kind of horror of these really dark energies, you know, and feeling like I was going to get overtaken and I was losing my mind, and I don't know upside down from right side up, and is right side up supposed to be upside down, you know, like, where in the world am I with all of this? So it can be really, really scary, and I'm not denying that at all. You know, it's kind of part of what we have to walk through when we come to understand the truth of what is going on here. And yet at the same time, it's like, but the light is always there, and so we will come through it. But what we're doing now is really having to walk through it, actually, to just kind of, it's like this parting of the seas that I see, right? It's, you know, all these references in the Bible, I'm like, man, those things are actually real, but it's like, it's not out there, it's here, it's an internal process that you go through. And so when you start to see the reality of the truth of what is going on, it's not about then diving into the false stories and this programming, right? And arguing with the programming. Like, we're not here to fight the program, we're here to bring in the light. When the light comes in, this starts to dismantle, and this can get really scary, because then we get confused about what is truth and what is not truth, and, you know, sorting through all that kind of stuff. But yet our focus is not supposed to be here. This is naturally kind of dismantling. Yes, we can get caught up in it, and of course there are things in our lives that we do have to grapple with, because it is so much in our lives, in our realities. Like I said, we're just raised into it, right? But again, this is not the focus of who we are and where we're supposed to be. We're just here. We're in the light. And so when we talk about, you know, mind control and mind programming, I used to think, I mean, it is, there are different levels of it, right? Like, yes, there are obviously places where you can go, and there are laboratories, and there are like literal physical experiments with that kind of stuff. But the majority of it that we receive is not that kind. It's the stuff that's just floating through the airwaves, right? It's like anytime you turn on a device, there is something. It imprints. The images matter, you know? It's the way the human body has been designed. And my son said something really interesting the other day. I don't know exactly how it came up or what we were talking about, but it was something to this effect, where we were talking about the messages that come in from society, you know, and he said something to the effect, and I said, yeah, they've had a really long time to perfect their craft, right? Because we were kind of talking. I said, yeah, what's so scary is like the fact that Hitler was elected. He said, well, it was also a really bad time, and so people were looking for a change, something different. And so I said, yeah, they've had a really long time to perfect their craft. And he said, no. He said, they're masters. And I thought, he's right. They came into this realm already having mastered that craft of control. Like it already existed. So, and yet that's not what we fight against, right? We don't fight against the mind control. The fight is internal. The battle is this. It's knowing you are the light. Feeling yourself as the light, finding that connection within you. And that's the first step. And if you're having trouble doing that, that's where the focus needs to be, right? Connecting to yourself, knowing that as absolute truth of who you are. And then you start to see where the programs come into your life. And they come in through everything. Everything you look at, everything you observe has a predefined meaning, a predefined context. It has a historical context attached to it that we accept by virtue of just being here. But it also comes through people. It comes through everyone because they are all programmed that way as well, right? So it's to start to see and understand how all of this comes at us to keep us here, to keep us going with this program, right? And this is kind of what we're seeing now too. It's it's interesting to watch the ebb and flow of information that comes through because, first it's this huge wave of fear of oh my God, this thing is coming and we can't stop it. Not only can we not stop it, we can't prevent it. We cannot, even if you get it, there's not enough supplies to save you, right? All these things. That kind of dies down. And then these new alerts come out, right? Now everyone should wear face masks. And what does that trigger when you see someone wearing this attire, right? It triggers something in your body and in your mind that you're probably totally unaware of. And I know that I've been kind of watching my own reactions. It's when I am in my home, I'm unaware that anything is even going on. When I go out to a store, that's when I'm whoa, people are really getting into this. Full length gloves and my daughter said, God, it looks like people, and they're wearing them in their cars now too, which she said, Mom, it's just really weird. It looks like everyone's going out to rob a store, and it's but to think it's not even, should people do this or not? It's just the image of that. What does that conjure up in our minds, right? And they're oh, it reminds, this movie Contagion and all these other things that are out there. Well, those things are out there already to create the story in our head. And we're looking and saying, oh yeah, that movie predicted it. No, where do you think these thoughts come from? Someone's intuition just led them. No, these come from other places. They create that story, they create that movie, the masses watch it, the masses have that now embedded into their minds. This is all programming. And so we're saying, oh yeah, look, it's just like this. It's playing out just like they said it would. Can you believe, truth is stranger than fiction? And yet truth is not truth, but reality is created based on ideas and mindsets that have already been programmed into us. So really the task is, are you going to continue to follow that, or are you going to see the light starting to crack through there? And it's not about engaging with this. It's about staying here, coming back to here. And yes, we have to go out into the world and interact with these things. But the trick is being aware of, like I said, even when I saw someone with, this equipment on, what is that trigger in me? What is that doing to me? Because it does, and it's totally subconscious and I'm not even aware of it until suddenly I'm over sanitizing, whatever, doing all this. And I'm okay, but this isn't how I actually feel internally. In the beginning, when all this started coming through, yeah, there was, like I said, my kids started feeling sick. There was this fear and I was being extra cautious. But when I stayed away from everything And I'm not saying to not be practical and do what feels right for you. Not at all. I'm not saying this is how you should be. This is just what has been true for me. That has dissipated, to the point where I was feeling quite not the best for quite a while with all of this. But I feel actually more healthier than I have felt in a really long time. Even with sinuses and allergies and all that kind of stuff, there's a weird stillness that has come over even my body in a way that I haven't really experienced before. So it's interesting. It's all just curious to me. I kind of just tend to watch my own reaction to everything that's going on. And this is where I kind of draw from. But the truth is that, we have two realities to pick from. And what is going to be your truth, because you absolutely have that choice. And this is where the energy, and I guess where I started this video was saying that, it's been a little bit hard to put out this video because there's a feeling of like, I need to do this, but then I'm like, but it's not the same urgency of like, oh my God, all this demonic, whatever kind of stuff going on. Like, it's not awful feeling. And yet it's like, yes, but we still need to push this out here, right? So it's like, yes, the light is here, but it is about dismantling this. And, some of us may be more aware than others, and the rest of humanity will catch up eventually, right? But this is what it is. It's like we've been through the worst of it in terms of saying, what the F is going on here? And the craziness with these energies. And let's say mainstream humanity has yet to go through that, right? They have yet to go through that kind of crisis of consciousness. I guess some people would call that like the dark night of the soul or whatever, where you have to kind of start to dive into your shadows. But I mean, those are just labels too, but it's really this connection to the light. It's like, does this start to serve you? And when you go into crisis and when things start to happen, you start to feel the bottomlessness of it, and I've been watching my family kind of go through this. It's like, you can pray all you want in the world, but in the end, like, are you okay? Like, do you feel okay with all of that? And I'm watching kind of this foundationlessness going on. And it's really scary and it's hard to watch. And yet, but that's the truth of when we give our power away to external sources and we rely on something else to make us feel better, to bring us peace and stillness. But what happens when we find that there's no real basis in that, and we are brought back to this space, which many of us know well, which is the truth of the light, right? The source, that we are eternal emanations. And really what happens here, this is just a story that kind of plays out. And that's why it really doesn't matter. It's like the light is here. Whatever goes on here, in the end, like, it's all okay. But there's such a, it's weird now. It's like when I think about this over here and then I think about my own internal being now, it's like the abundance and the richness that I feel here, it doesn't even compare to what that external reality was that I was trying to live in the past. So I don't know if any of this makes sense. But really, when I was thinking about this over the last couple of days, it's about the mind control and understanding and recognizing what that is and how that works for you. It's going to be different for every person. And yet, of course, there are so many similarities that we can draw on. But you will notice that, that you start to get anxious, you start to get triggered when you watch things. And my mom said to me, like, in the very beginning of all this, she said, it really pays to watch the news, though, so that you know what's going on. But I don't feel better. I felt sicker. The more I watched, the more information I took in, the sicker I felt, And we know this is true. We can make ourselves sick. You can catch a cold or the flu by thinking about it, by being in fear of it. That's mind control. It doesn't have to be some gray alien sitting and zapping your brain with some, probes and electrodes. it comes through, these media waves, all the time. We're getting bombarded with it all the time. And this is the thing I noticed too, like people will talk about like, whatever, these EMF or like 5G and things like this, but in the end, it's like what I've been feeling is like that really cannot affect you when you see it and when you feel it. And I've had some really weird experiences with my mind where I've had moments where I felt like my mind was being wiped, where I could hear people saying things, but I couldn't hear it, couldn't process it, as if I was almost living in a different reality through my mind. Times where I just didn't hear things, but that's the brain. That's the way the brain functions with trauma and with consciousness. So it really is the more that you connect to your light and you catch those moments. And I've had this too, where it even happens in my sleep, and I went through this thing for about a week now where I was like, okay, I want to get up early. We have this dog now that like, it's good because I've been needing something to kind of get me out of bed and get me up and get me outside and walking and all this kind of stuff, which it's doing exactly what I wanted, right? But then there's also the other side of it, which is like, well, now it's really hard to find quiet time to do my work because he's just an extremely large puppy. And we have a very small house and all that kind of stuff. But what I was trying to do was, okay, I need to get up extra early so I can go take him, and then I can come home and I can do my stuff and get it over with, and then still have the whole day to do whatever I need to do with the kids in the house and whatnot. Every night I was like, okay, I'm going to get up and do this. And then I would wake up in the morning and I would lay there like, well, why do I have to get up? Like I could do this later. And this went on for about a week, and I thought, this is insane. Like, what the heck is going on here? Because every day then I'd be like, see, this is why I have to get up early, because I could do this. This will be in place, and then I could do this and get all these things done. And the later I got up, the more trapped I felt. Because time, and then the dog, and like if he didn't get exercise early, and all this kind of stuff, And it was like this crazy thing that I was trapped in for like a week, maybe 2 weeks. And I finally realized, like, oh my God, this is some kind of thing that I'm trapped in my mind. I need to, like, come in here and pinpoint this when I wake up in the morning. And I finally did. Like, I wrote it all down before I went to bed. I was like, this is why I need to get up. This is the plan. This is the schedule. And I realized there's something that comes in to the mind. And this is where I started to really see the level of programming that goes on. And it targets these highly sensitive light beings because we're so good at blaming ourselves and saying we procrastinate, we're lazy, we must be depressed, da, da, da. How come we can't be like the millionaire mindset and get up early and lift weights and all these things? And there have been times in my life where I have been that person because I had a place to go to, right? It's like I had this thing I was doing, so I had to get up extra early and work out. And as long as I worked out, I was okay. And I ate really healthy and I did all these things. Like I did that. I was a part of that for a very long time, and it worked really well and it served me. But it was also part of a system, because I had a place to go. I had a thing that I was involved with that also outlined and made the structure for me. When that gets taken away, when you're not plugging into something that is predefined, it's much more challenging. And this is where you will start to see, entrepreneurs. It's like, okay, this is how I make my life happen. Because you have to go and you have to figure it out for your own self now. There's nothing else that's calling you or telling you what to do or telling you that you're going to suffer if you don't actually do these things, right? But that's all a part of the control. And this is the whole thing that's getting turned on its head right now. But when I started to see this, so I got up, I had written this kind of list of like, okay, here's what I have set out to do for myself. Here's why I know it needs to happen. Now, what is coming in at what intercept in between to kind of take this whole thing offline that I continually set up for myself, right? There's a weird program out there that talks about as long as you are plugged into a system that serves us, you will be able to make these things happen for yourself. I can feel that right now coming through. It's crazy. That little bit of like mind fog that kind of starts to waft in. Anyway, this is my message. It's going to be different for everybody, but it's very, very real. And the level of programming, I mean, we are all highly, 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 highly programmed. You have to be in order to have survived this long, and the worse you feel internally, it's probably a good indication that you hold a lot more, you've been subjected to a lot more programming than other people. I tend to find those that feel the worst, feel the most shame, the most guilt. That's because you have a deeper level of the programs and a deeper level of stuff that you have carried over, from other lifetimes. You don't just get that from one existence, it gets impressed and embedded, and it becomes easier and easier to program us as well. That's the thing, because we already hold that signature. So anyway, I can feel the energies here starting up, but this is really the truth of it, is that yes, it's here, but yes, the light is coming through so we can also see it. So don't miss when the light comes through the cracks. Don't discount that, because you're seeing it for a reason. And to allow that to fall away and allow it to dismantle and allow yourself to take control of your own mind, your own reality, and your own existence. And, as I've said, this year is really about the light beings, the light workers, clearing this up for themselves before we really start to kind of step out and humanity starts to experience this as well, because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be pretty painful for people to have to go through. So, all right, I'm going to end this here. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Take good care. We'll talk soon.